because I wanted to know more. I wanted to know when there is a soul and when there is this disease. And I asked myself, why do I have that disease? And that question brought me to the main and basic question, which is actually the only question you have to ask yourself in your life. It's the only important question. All other questions appear later or besides that and are more or less important, but not that important. And that one question is, who are you? I ask myself, who am I? Who am I really? Who are you really? And there was nothing. There was kind of an emptiness still and then darkness. And I didn't know what to do then, but I felt that there was something. And I loved to learn about that higher self, that which psychology named self. That's the opposite of the ego. That is actually your bigger part and your essential part of the soul. Actually, the higher self is your true self. I want to say the whole thing now. Here again, I told it in other videos too. We focus this life, which is actually just a small part of a bigger thing. And all religions and all philosophies say the same thing, that there's a soul which lives, I don't know how long, let's say endless. And this life here in the body, in that material world, is just a piece of 100 years or most cases 80 years. I don't know. Let's say around 100 years. There are also cases of over 100, so I say around 100 years. We take it so serious to earn so much stuff for that 100 years, but at the end of that 100 years, we lose everything when we die. So why care for having more and more and more? It's the ego which here appears. Normally, you are just consciousness, you are this higher self, which suddenly makes a human experience. You can also consider rebirth. It has a rebirth after the death and again makes that appearance and can't break out. But then one day there is a breakout and you can go to that endless, just be consciousness without that ego when you leave this illusion one day. But even if you don't believe in rebirth, you can see it as a timeline, as I explained in that other video. Whatever path or religion you prefer, it's the same thing. The problem is we are here now in this dimension for that 100 years about, and there is something before and after, and both we are not in that body. And we don't need all that material stuff to protect us, to protect the body and to feed the body and all that stuff. We don't need that normally. It's just for that 100 years, but we take that so serious to collect all that stuff and to have all this stuff, to have your fun and all the time, and we don't prepare for the time which comes after this. And this is actually, it's nothing new what I say here. Actually, all religions, and there were also silly philosophies, but the good philosophies also say that there is something behind this life, there is something after, but we don't know what. Some try to explain, but most people focus that there is something more, and they just focus to have here now a good life, but this will not bring them for what comes next. Just holding on to all this stuff will bring you a very hard death, because the more stuff you have, the more you have to let go at the end. And this is hard. This is really hard. And therefore, it is good to practice now as soon as possible to let go things and to let go stuff. And this insights gave me more and more peace to know about there's something bigger. And this here, this life, is just a very, very small part of a huge thing. And so it's not so important to have all that stuff which actually doesn't make happy. And why has it that, and why didn't it bring happiness to me? I could also find a solution. Of course, there was something inside my soul which says it doesn't bring happiness. Because the true happiness you just can find when you find your higher self. Because the higher self is connected with what people also call God. The higher self, also psychology says that. Carl Jung says that in the higher self is the place where you can meet God when you are in deep meditation. This goes through the higher self. But first you have to explore your higher self. Most people don't even know that such thing exists. They even don't consider that they have the ego and they are just in the ego. First of all, you must find out that you have this ego and it's active most of the time and causes all that negative thoughts. The second step is that you must know about there's something else besides the ego, which is much bigger, and that's the higher self. And when you know this, then you can go forward and be open to whatever comes and what religions and philosophies have talked about. But first of all, you don't have to believe anything. You don't have to believe there is a God or so, because when you try to believe in God without the self, you are in thinking, you are just an ego, and ego is just in thinking, and thinking is not loving, it's not from the heart. Thinking is just on a cognitive level, and from thinking you can never grasp God, because when you think there's a God, you produce in mental image, mental illness also. Okay, you produce a mental image of God. You have an image of God in, in with your inner eyes, and you just consider God, but that's not God. And therefore also the problems between the religions appear when they say my God and your God, because this comes from the mind, which always produces separation. That's the problem. To really find God, you first have to find yourself. You first have to overcome the ego and to find yourself, your true self. And that you can find through the basic questions, the actually basic question, which is, who are you really? But it doesn't appear then when you ask the question at the same moment. Maybe for some people, spontaneous enlightenment appears and they directly are freed from ego and higher self is present. But for most people, and also for me, it's a process. But then later I started with meditation, and meditation also is a friend on your way. It's not just considering and thinking back to your childhood and what was your hobbies. Also, this is also just on the surface, but it can help maybe to find your higher self. But this is not in every case, and this is also just through thinking. You also have to consider that there is still the ego, which is the thinker in us, as you know from neuroscience. Gerhard Roth, for example, a modern German neuroscientist, says that the ego, the thinking, is located in the neocortex. Actually, all neuroscientists say that the ego is, or the thinking is located in the neocortex, in the analytic part of the brain. But the point is, you must overcome this, and there meditation will help you to calm down that overactive ego, which is always thinking and never want to stop with thinking and blah blah. When there is people try to run away from their thinking through talking with others, but it's the same thing. It's just a loud thinking, so it doesn't really solve the problem. Solving the problem is about meditation and to calm down the thinker. And so just actually meditation can bring you to your higher self. And I found that out, and I was so astounded about that inside. Oh, why haven't I meditated before? Why don't they learn meditation at school? Why couldn't they teach us that at school? So I also made whole videos about that problem. I wish that if there is any rebirth or so for my next life, I would wish that I learn more essential stuff at school. So to not go in the same traps that I just learn that I have to learn that I have to earn money and have to reach things to have a good life. And actually, then I must see that this doesn't make lucky and I need bigger things and better things. And again, I must see it's not bringing happiness. And I'm always sad and I don't want to be so a circle of sadness and of unhappiness is to find out about that higher self. And that's actually the only thing. And there is just this basic question what you have to ask, and this is who are you really? And that's the only question. Again, I want to count it in 3 steps. First thing is there is an ego, and you have an ego, even if you think you have not, because you are such a good person. Everyone has it. That's a fact. Read Sigmund Freud, or everyone has it, and it blocks, and it makes all our problems. And the second thing is find your higher self. It will solve your problems. And the third thing is forgive. Don't fall in that trap that your ego comes back and says, why haven't they told me about the higher self and about meditation and all that stuff? And why have I suffered all that years? And don't make the people guilty. They don't know better. That's the third point.